and just essentially just a welcome and thank you for joining us virtually. We would love to have hosted you at IDEALondon, but I hope you're all having a great morning. You've helped yourself to your teas, coffees and croissants if you're lucky. So as an introduction, my name's Darren Balcombe. I'm the Deputy CEO of Capital Enterprise. I'll be hosting today's event. And so to give a little context, Capital Enterprise are partners in the IDEALondon Future Mobility Programme alongside EDF Energy and UCL. And together we form a collaborative partnership at IDEALondon, which is a fantastic incubator space for startups located in East London. And the goal of the programme is to bring the various players in the mobility ecosystem with a focus on startup support, to bring them together to host events, explore the trends and opportunities open to those working on mobility solutions. So for each event, we focus on a different theme. In the past, we've covered topics on the business of mobility, the impact of COVID, AI, electrification, but today we will focus and take a closer look at 5G and connectivity. And I'm sure it's a topic that has dominated most of your news feeds overnight and we were just mentioning beforehand on the panel that the decision by Huawei, a decision on Huawei's future involvement in 5G infrastructure. But today we'll get to hear from those working to support 5G rollout, those who are developing businesses on the tech platform, and those who are supporting the businesses to develop their tech as well. So let me just outline the first 70-ish minutes. We'll kick off with an expert overview by Stephen Douglas to give a snapshot of 5G in the UK. After that, we'll invite 3 excellent companies to showcase their products and services. And then we'll open up for a discussion where we'll be joined by a great panel to explore the opportunities and challenges afforded by 5G. But before I kick off, I just wanted to first invite our panelists just to give a quick introduction, outline who they are, what they do. So if we can just go around and give a quick introduction. So let's just start with Stephen. Stephen, can you give a quick intro?
Absolutely, and good morning everyone, and thanks Darren. So I'm Steve Douglas. I head up 5G strategy for a company called Spirent Communications. We're UK based. We are one of the industry leaders in the test, security and service assurance space for the communication industry. And we work right across the complete 5G ecosystem, from the equipment manufacturers, service providers, government, military. And today we're engaged in over 150 plus commercial 5G engagements worldwide. So we've got a pretty good understanding of what's going on in the 5G space.
Excellent, thanks Stephen. Let's go to next up, Jessica.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I'm Jessica Rallis and head of the Urban Connected Communities in the 5G Testbeds and Trials programme within DCMS. I work very closely and primarily with the team in West Midlands 5G, who won the award of the Urban Connected Communities programme of work. So they have a number of work streams. One is around transport, mobility, and another on applications accelerator. And they're also doing a lot of work about the infrastructure acceleration. So looking at barrier busting with local authorities to be able to deploy 5G sites, etc., in a much more easier way, working with planning departments. So yeah, we've got a broad spread of activity there in the West Midlands. So I look forward to being in the panel later to discuss some of the opportunities there.
Excellent, thank you, Jessica. Next, Patricia.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. My name is Patricia Latore. I'm the Public Policy and Partnerships Manager at Humanizing Autonomy. You'll hear more later about what we do, but in my role, I lead all engagements with government agencies, with cities, public transit authorities, all our grants, and kind of other unique innovation partnerships that we have here in the UK, but also in Germany, in the US, and recently started with our sales manager in Japan.
Excellent, very exciting. Thanks, Patricia. And now to Don.
Hi everyone, really pleased to be here. I'm the CEO and founder of Conigital. Conigital stands for Connected Digital, and in essence we're an on-demand driverless vehicle and ride-hailing startup, and really keen to see how we can utilise 5G, the greater speeds in our technical space.
Excellent, thanks Don. So that's the panel, and thanks everyone for that short intro. I'd like to encourage all those who are watching to use the chat function on Zoom during the event, essentially just to introduce yourself. We've got lots of interesting companies watching, so it'd be useful to see who's with us. And likewise, if you have any questions during the event, to the speakers, to the panelists, to the show, those who are showcasing, put them in there and we'll do our best to get to them. If we can't get to them in person, I'm sure some of the speakers or the presenters can actually come back during the chat as well to respond. But first of all, let's hand over to Stephen, who's going to give us an overview of 5G in the UK. Over to you, Stephen.
Thank you, Darren. And let's just see if I've got control of the slides here.
Yeah, here we go. Here's the tech bit.
There you go. Oh, it's gone too far. I'll have to go back. Let's check it.
So just to say, if there are issues, Laurel can help move the slides backwards or forwards. So if you have any issues, just let us know.
Perfect. That seems to be working good now. First of all, again, thanks everyone for inviting me here today to give this introductory or kickoff talk. As I said, I head up strategy for into the 5G space for Spirent Communications, who really does focus on the testing side of the business. So we create solutions and technologies that help the whole industry through research right through to launching commercial 5G services and networks. I thought I would start off with the obligatory one slide overview on 5G, but rather than as a technology, more as an ambition. Because it is obviously the next generation of cellular communications, which is currently obviously being deployed across the world today. And its aim at its heart really is a radical leap to try to transform the communications industry with blazingly fast speeds, really low and ultra reliable latency, and ubiquitous connectivity of everything. And at its heart, I would say, is an ambition to become a general purpose technology like electricity or the automobile. And that's a technology that can both service consumers, but also all types of industries alike. In essence, a critical enabler for the future digital industries and services, whether it's our transportation systems, our factories and manufacturing plants, our healthcare systems, our cities, and even our security and defense organizations. And there's a real big opportunity, I suppose, that the market's identified that 5G can bring. It's estimated by market analysts today that 5G is going to enable close to, I think, $12.3 trillion of global economic output by 2035. Now, to put that into perspective, that's about 4 times the gross domestic product of the UK, who are the world's 6th largest economy. And if you just look at the UK in itself, Barclays did a recent study, I think it was late last year, that estimated 5G technology could boost the UK economy by anywhere up to over 15.7 billion by 2025. And that's opportunity ranges across a lot of different types of industries and sectors. It's not just you and I, the consumer, making voice calls or downloading and watching videos or surfing the web. It really is reaching out into different types of industries, including the transportation sector. So if we just quickly look at the market, just to give everybody a snapshot of not just where the UK is, but where the world is in terms of 5G. Well, the market is definitely accelerating today to try to attempt to realize this potential. So today, if we look at it, there's over 75 commercial 5G network launches worldwide. Now, to be fair, most of these are still reasonably limited in scale and coverage, but it's accelerating faster than we ever saw before with any other generation of cellular. There's over hundreds of new devices which are now commercially available, ranging from smartphones, TVs, and customer premises equipment. And just looking at the early performance, we do a lot of field testing for the organization or for the industry, to see is 5G really delivering and some of these new hyped promises. Well, today we are seeing speeds anywhere between 5 to 10 times faster than what we get with LTE networks, and latency is considerably lower. But we still are, a long way off the types of speeds that the technology is hyped that it should be able to deliver in the future. And I think we're going to see that over the next coming years as the technology starts to mature. Consumer demand is starting to rise. The subscriber uptake worldwide, where the 5G has launched, is increasing. What I would say is that new revenues are a little bit elusive at the moment, specifically from the consumer markets. And the benefit we're seeing, or where we believe the opportunity really is, it's in industries. Industries are really going to hold the key for where 5G actually really makes a material difference. So let's look at one of these industries, really the future of future mobility. And I really just wanted to start actually with a quote. I remember hearing a great quote from Dr. Dieter Zetsche. Some of you may know him. He was the chairman of Daimler and then the head of Mercedes-Benz for quite a number of years. And he said this wonderful quote that the invention of the automobile was a declaration of independence. Wow, I thought that was great, a declaration of independence. That's what it used to be. So that's got me thinking, if the automobile was originally about independence, well, what's connected and autonomous mobility and intelligent transport systems? What are they really going to be about? Or how are we going to perceive them in the future? And there's many schools of thoughts on this, but in my humble opinion, it's actually about our own morality, our own conscience for, I think, a greener, cleaner society is where I think the opportunity is around this here. So I think that's where the opportunity is. And let's just explain what I mean by that. So if you look at the goals and ambitions of connected vehicles, connected autonomous mobility, intelligent transport systems, all these terms, I think it is clear we are thinking about the future of our society and our environment. It's not just about technology. There is this potential to reduce accidents and prevent deaths on our roads through the use of things like early warning communications between the vehicle and the vehicle and the infrastructure, the vehicle and the pedestrian itself. And this includes things like forward collision warnings to allow preemptive maneuvers for crash avoidance, and the activation of pre-crash actions, for example, to trigger countermeasures, whether it be pre-arming an airbag in the vehicle or even emergency braking automatically to avoid the accident. I think there's also opportunities around lowering fuel consumption, reducing congestion and CO2 emissions through intelligent traffic management. There's use cases which are being developed today, such as vehicle platooning, where groups of vehicles can drive closer together in a coordinated manner to help decrease fuel consumption, increase efficiency and reduce traffic congestion. And then I think there's a major societal goal, which probably doesn't get talked about as much, but it's really about providing transportation accessibility, creating a fairer society for the disconnected. And now that's with partial or full automated cars, offering car sharing or ride hailing opportunities. A lot of the future people maybe won't own vehicles, and there's a lot of people out there who just simply don't have access to transportation systems, and 5G and connected vehicles could really enable this potential. So if we, a little bit too quick here, if we just look at the timeline, sorry, I'm just one slide too far here. There we go. So if we look at the timeline and the pathways the communication industry is on today, it really is a journey. It's not a big bang and we're just creating a new technology that's going to enable autonomous vehicles for the future overnight. It is a slow process for a number of reasons, because we are talking about life critical systems and services here. So with current 4G cellular technologies, we're creating today systems to establish vehicle-to-everything communications and establishing those foundational applications for basic safety. So today vehicles are shipping with the 4G vehicle-to-everything chipsets. And by 2022, our colleagues in the industry are estimating there's going to be around 125 million connected vehicles benefiting from this technology and for higher levels of traffic safety. Going forward is when we really start to embrace 5G and really realizing those new capabilities of ultra low latency and higher throughputs. And that's really going to enable the types of use cases that are going to be required as we move towards advanced driver systems and finally full autonomous driving. And we expect to see the first sort of 5G enabled vehicles being deployed probably by 2024, just with the life cycle in terms of getting the chipsets available and getting them into the production lines of the automotive industry itself. And here in the UK, I would call out, I mean, there's a phenomenal leadership here, which is being demonstrated by a wide range of both amazing and cutting edge innovation from government supported trials and test beds, from commercial ventures which are happening. There's a lot of university research going on, and I'm really pleased to see that there's a really vibrant startup ecosystem also starting to appear around this here. So what I would just like to do towards the end here is just look at an example of what's actually some of the work that's being done here in the UK. And there's many examples, but I thought this was a really exciting one. This is pioneering work that's being done here with Warwick University Manufacturing Group and the company National Instruments and Spirent as part of a program called the Midlands Future Mobility Program. And the ambition obviously is around enabling these future 5G autonomous vehicles to really help provide those future safety features and movement to autonomy. The challenge that the industry has today is that testing on real roads is extremely limited. It's time consuming. It's obviously risky as well. And 5G networks today, well, they're not universally available. While I talk about, they're starting to deploy, they're only in limited areas of the country today. You don't really have much access to them in terms to do what the types of testing or configurations you might need for these mission critical types of services. So there's really a clear need to be able to replicate complex driving scenarios, the changing environmental conditions, whether it's lights changing, visibility starts to change, unexpected events such as a pedestrian walking out in front of a vehicle, and then the behavior of the overall communications networks to make sure it's robust, it's not suddenly lost because we're in an urban canyon or we're driving through a tunnel, what would happen in that scenario. So to achieve this here, the work that's being done in this program is to develop something called a digital twin. It's a 5G network digital twin, basically a replica of the physical or future 5G networks, a sandbox, as you like, a playground under your control that you can configure and do whatever you want with. It doesn't require the access of costly spectrum or equipment. And if you look at the slide here, what you see is here on the bottom right-hand side is the 5G network digital twin. So this is a software replica of a full 5G network, and it's communicating or cooperating to the left-hand side with an advanced driving simulator to prove out some of these benefits. And this driving simulator that you see on the left here, which has been developed by Warwick Manufacturing Group, it's a 360-degree photorealistic environment, which actually hosts a real vehicle inside a chamber, shielding it from all the external communications network. Now, the vehicle sitting inside this photorealistic environment, its sensors, its cameras, it actually believes it's in a real world environment. And then with the 5G network digital twin replacing the external communications network, now the vehicle not only thinks it's in a real world environment, it also thinks it's in a real 5G network. And that means together, combining these two environments together, we can create a virtual environment for this vehicle to run whatever what-if test scenarios, to test out all of those complex environmental what-ifs, emergency scenarios, without having to be on the real roads or tracks. And the goal of this is obviously to accelerate getting autonomous vehicles onto commercial roads in the UK faster, but also to prototype and research new types of use cases and benefits of what 5G and mobility could bring in a more cost-efficient way. So I thought that was a good example, just some of the pioneering work that's being done. So I know I'm coming to the end of the 10 minutes here, so let me just sort of conclude here and just really call out one thing. I would say the truth of the matter is that future mobility is well underway. The rapid pace of technology development at the moment is it's ferocious within the industry. So, back to that quote from Dr. Didier Zetsche, if that was all about, our freedoms, let's make 5G and the autonomous vehicle really about our morality and actually deliver that, a greener, a cleaner and safer world. And I really think that's the opportunity we have with 5G and transportation systems and mobility going forward. So I'll stop at this point and thanks everyone for allowing me to give you the intro here. If there is any questions, I'm happy to take one or two now if we have the time. Otherwise, we can hold them off to the panel.
So, Stephen, there is one question that just came through, and in terms of brevity, it'd be great if you could answer it. It's a broad, wide-ranging question, but essentially, who pays for the wider 5G infrastructure rollout, and how much will it cost? It's a kind of a tricky question. That's from, let's see who that's from. I think that's from Richard.
Yeah, it's a
good. Yeah,
it's a great question. I mean, historically, the infrastructure build-outs have been, the responsibility purely of the communication service providers themselves. The Vodafones, the British Telecoms, etc., building it out themselves. What I would say is that as we start to realize that if a technology like 5G moves beyond purely just the traditional use cases, I think it is in the interest of other industries to become involved in that build out. And I think we're starting to see that. So we're starting to see utility companies, the train networks, cable industry, for example, in the US, realizing that their real estate, where they have physical assets on the ground with power supplies, can be useful and helpful to start creating enablers for the broader 5G deployments. I think government obviously has a major role to play. It's not just about funding. I think it's more about oversight and regulatory. So making spectrum easier available, making planning permissions slightly easier and less constrained than they are today, if we are really going to embrace this. But I really do think we'll see, a marriage needs to come together of both, the big traditional service providers, government, and a wider range of private sector players, to I think really to really exploit this opportunity.
Excellent. Thanks, Stephen. Much appreciated. Lots of interesting data points there. Really interesting. The Midlands future mobility, the digital twin. So if you do have questions, feel free to actually put them in the chat function. We'll be picking up next on the showcase, but Stephen may be able to get back to some of those questions as we go through the showcase. So next up, we have 3 great startups to share more about their exciting technologies that they're developing. So first up, we have Don from Conigital.
Hi, everyone. So my name's Don. I'm the CEO and founder of Conigital. Conigital stands for Connected Digital, and we're an on-demand driverless vehicle and ride-hailing startup. I think it's really interesting what Stephen's already covered off. There's a lot of touch points in my own presentation, some other things that have sparked some ideas as well. Yep, if we get to the next slide, please. Yeah, so in essence, we've been established since 2015. We've been very much working on our R&D platforms. We've secured just over £3.5 million developing our base R&D platforms. And this is all about moving people, goods and services in a more connected, autonomous, climate-friendly and cost-effective way. We're now just starting to come out of our R&D and looking to commercialize our key offerings, and our key offerings are around 3 core pillars that we've built around our turnkey solution, which is around ConAV, which is our lift and shift driverless vehicle platform, ConOp, our operational asset management platform that works in the back end, and our on-demand ride-hailing application, ConApp. Interestingly enough, if we could move to the next slide. Yeah, so interestingly enough, we think that one of the key aspects of mobility is to really ensure that there's a good passenger experience, and this will help make that change for people to change their behavior in terms of how they use transport at the moment. We are moving more and more towards a connected mobility as a service type solution. And one of the key things that we're trying to do is integrate autonomous vehicles safely into the local transport system. This is something that's really key to our clients. And as part of that, better journeys or better passenger experiences, we've also been working on a in-vehicle concierge that's not only available in our vehicles, but can be taken further into other transport systems. If we could move to the next slide. So for us, it's all about integrating, the acronym is known as ACEs, autonomous, connected, electric, and shared vehicles into the existing transport market. And we've been very lucky and a lot of hard work actually to have secured early POCs and projects in that first and last mile transport area, and this is with airports where we're automating a bus to move people from a long stay car park to the terminal building. We're involved in some smart city projects, and this is where we're taking a Ford Ranger, an automated vehicle, and doing a on-demand 5-stop circuit in Australia actually. And we're starting to explore other opportunities around large campuses, large industrial sites where we can move people safely, taking into consideration and looking at modifications for COVID to ensure safe travel. I think where it really gets interesting as well is around the markets that we're moving towards. So sorry, if you get to the next slide. Yeah, so one of the key markets, I've borrowed this slide from our friends Intel, who we work with, and what they define as a key market is the passenger economy market. And this is all about, what are you going to do if you're no longer driving? What are you going to do with your time? How can you be more productive? And this is where a lot of the infotainment systems start becoming applicable, allowing you to do business as you move. And this is a core area that we're really focusing on. And this is potentially a £7 trillion market. Okay, if we can move to the next slide. So that's a little bit about us and some of the things that we're looking to do. But really, if we start looking at where 5G is and what the use case is and potential is, it's huge. It's huge for transport. It's huge for the modal shift that needs to take place to get at zero cities, zero congestion, zero climate, and so on and so forth. So these are really important maneuvers into that space. And for autonomous vehicles, it's still very early on for us. We're very interested in this area. We haven't tested specifically with 5G just yet, but in some of the applications, faster download speeds, using the connectivity to be able to see around the corner, being able to have vehicle-to-vehicle communications is really important. A key project that we've just, a feasibility that we've just recently completed is around smart cities, and how do you future-proof transport for smart cities. In our particular case, we've taken a brownfield site and looked to see how do we integrate and look at the infrastructure both below, on and above ground to enable driverless vehicles to be safely adopted as part of a multimodal mobility as a service type solution. And so we see lots of potential with 5G in the driverless vehicle industry. And I think it's also going to be really key around accessibility. And I think Stephen touched on this point earlier with the people who are bringing more about the less abled or the disabled into society more, giving them the confidence to be able to travel and go to where they need. Again, key is the ability to trial new technologies, that infotainment piece that we were discussing, being able to use augmented reality, VR applications, and a host of other aspects are quite exciting use cases that we're very keen to do more research and find out more on. I think specifically as well for the vehicles themselves, it's very much around the V2X, so vehicle to infrastructure, vehicle to vehicle, allowing over-the-air updates, so you always know from your connected fleet what's happening. And when you start taking transport and treating it almost as a single organism or as a fleet, you're going to get a lot more efficiencies in the system. Currently, that's not how transport is viewed, and creates and really helps. Sorry, not helps, but creates those inefficiencies and congestion that we have today. Thank you. If you could go to the next slide. Yeah, so this was again, it's just carrying on from the better broadband speeds that we're able to have will support that whole passenger experience, and we think that's absolutely crucial to making things happen. We are aware of obviously some of the challenges. If we could move to the next slide, please. We are aware of some of the key challenges around 5G, and again, this is something that we're keen to address, especially some of the myths, some of the things that we were hearing with coronavirus, that it's being caused by 5G, and you had so many incidents of people trying to tear down masts, was disappointing to hear. So I think there's a lot more education that's required to ensure people don't have these type of ideas. I think with 5G,
just if you got one more minute.
Okay, thank you. With 5G, the coverage is going to be very much city-based, and we do need to look at and address how that's going to be impacted in more rural areas, and how that would actually operate and work. I think those are the key points that I really wanted to cover. I know that some of the other areas that I've got will be addressed elsewhere. Yeah, so I think for our perspective in the driverless vehicle industry, there's huge potential for 5G. There's lots of use cases that we would like to explore, and we're keen to work with partners who can help us test our vehicles into that space. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Don. So if you do have any questions to put to Don, please put them into the chat. Don will also be joining the panel afterwards as well. So next up, we have Patricia. Patricia, are you ready?
Good.
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So yeah, my name is Patricia Tori, as mentioned earlier. I'm going to talk about a different perspective on 5G urban mobility from the vulnerable road user perspective. So that's going to be pedestrians, cyclists, persons with disabilities, anyone not inside a vehicle. You're going to hear me talk a lot about edge and cloud products because we offer both. And so I want people to think about, as we're talking about kind of the connection between these, it's really an opportunity to reimagine and redesign urban mobility, but also what does urban mobility mean? We've really come at it from a infrastructure road perspective, but we're also operating at interchanges, at tram platforms, and other perspectives. So connected autonomous vehicles, of course, one piece, but urban mobility is much broader. It's really an opportunity, of course, and then we really need harmonized regulations. We're going to talk about kind of different cities internationally, different approaches that are happening. And then lastly, privacy, security, of course, vital, but it's also a really unique opportunity to start talking about ethical products. And that's a little bit different of a perspective maybe than in other ways. So really quickly, why do we do what we do? Before I tell you what we do, but our perspective is that urban mobility is not built for people. So when you're looking at streets today, they're designed around vehicles, but also when we're looking at the future in terms of autonomous vehicles, we currently do not have trials in truly urban environments. So of course, there's an insurance cost perspective to it. The pedestrians, the cyclists are an unmanageable risk. Even, also in human drivers today, we still see a lot of accidents. Vision Zero are a great initiative, but it's really been slow progress to date. So our approach in this is that we are a camera-based predictive AI company. So we understand, analyze, and predict human behaviors in real time. And you do this all the time as a human driver, as a fellow pedestrian, as a cyclist. You understand if someone's going to cross the road, step into the street based on their behaviors. Where are they on the curb? Where are they looking? Are they distracted? By what are they distracted? Are they carrying something? These are all kind of nuanced behaviors that we can pick up. And it's also important to note here that we can integrate with all sorts of cameras. So it's not just in vehicle, but also CCTV and infrastructure cameras. So when we're talking here about 5G, it's how do all these communicate with each other simultaneously, and what is that going to enable? And of course, what are the risks with that? We do this and how we do it and why. So the approach is that we use a combination of behavior psychology, statistical AI, and novel deep learning. And really, it's about safety and efficiency. Of course, you don't want a vehicle to stop every time it thinks someone's going to cross. So when we think about autonomous vehicles, we want to make sure that it's a smooth journey. But when we're talking about buses today or other kind of public transportation, even just the easing into an intersection to get through, we don't want it to heartbreak every time it thinks someone's going to step into the road. So we're really talking about here about efficiency as well. It's also about sustainability. I think a lot of times, and probably one of the comments and questions that already came up was, how do we rank safety versus sustainability? We don't think they should be one or the other. Why can't it be done at the same time? And the approach and kind of, when you look at legislations today, usually these things are approached differently, and potentially 5G is an opportunity to bring these approaches and thoughts together. So as I mentioned, there's two pieces to it. There's edge and cloud. I'll talk about edge first. That's really the kind of solution, the software that's integrating with vehicles. So it can be, of course, autonomous vehicles, any type of shuttle, autonomous freight delivery applications. But there's also the application today in terms of driver assist. So we can integrate with dash cam separately. We can also do blind spot warning, forward collision warning. So we don't have to wait for autonomous vehicles to start talking about these 5G opportunities. We can start testing today. And that's really kind of the advantage that we have. But then there's also the cloud product. So here it's more about behavior analysis. So we also call it post-event analysis. And this can be camera footage either from on vehicle or CCTV, for example. And here we can look at, if we're integrating with a vehicle, for example, for freight, we can look at the routes that they're driving, and they might be optimized from a fuel efficiency standpoint, avoiding right or left turns and other things. But what about VRU density along the route? How safe is the route for a driver and for vulnerable road users? And then potentially with 5Gs, how can these routes be optimized in real time? These are all different things that we want to explore with partners and currently are. And then of course, there's also kind of a human behavior analysis for social distancing that I'll talk about in a second. In terms of the actual solution and then the performance, so we're about 2 seconds faster, and this is based on our London data set, which is one of the largest we have. We get data from our partnerships and customers all over the world, but we are currently working with Transport for London and Arriva buses, which is what this data set is. But so about 2 seconds faster. So you see the cyclist has a red box, and in the video it shows where she comes out and kind of where the software sees her. And if you're looking at it, you see her a lot later. So that's kind of the point of the 2 seconds that we see. But it's the reduction of false positives that I mentioned earlier. It's the driving efficiency. How can we have cars easing into these situations, really similar to what a human driver does? And we can do that with our technology. And then of course, the crossing intent is really important, and that's at 99% for us. So I talked about behavior analytics in terms of our cloud product. So we are currently working with Transport for Greater Manchester as part of the Innovate UK COVID fast response projects. And here we're looking at interchanges, but also, you know, what I mentioned earlier with urban mobility, it can be vehicle interiors, it can be roadside infrastructure and stations. So how can all these kind of pieces come together using edge and cloud products? The key here is also that there's a lot of kind of, you know, detection opportunities and softwares out there that will tell you have these number of people, pedestrians, cyclists. There's a lot of work going on in social distancing measurement, but what we're able to do is really kind of focus on behavior. So why are people doing what they're doing? Understanding that if there's a barrier, for example, or why are people dwelling at the top of stairs at interchanges? How can we optimize these kinds of decisions? And of course, now with social distancing, things are changing weekly in terms of recommendations, you know, and then how we're transitioning from 2 meters to 1 meter. So really showing that urban mobility is actually really fast moving, and also in social policies and other aspects. So we can bring in that people dynamic and understand how behavior is actually changing in real time. So also important for us is that we are working, I'll go back one, internationally. So we're working with partners across the globe. And this is what I mean in terms of we need, you know, regulations and approaches that are coordinated. It really is going to be difficult for us as a SME. 5G is already really difficult as it is to coordinate, understand, figure out who's active, who do we want to work with. But across from a city perspective, are there going to be different regulations nationally, internationally, if you're looking at the EU and other things. So we're working with really, like I said, all over the world with these partners and commercial partners to make sure that we can be well positioned. And we think that's kind of the right approach to take in this. And then we do like to talk about who the we is. We talk a lot about that. So we usually sit at Somerset House, we're a team of 30. And I mentioned earlier, our touched base on kind of the ethical piece to AI-based products. And I think it's going to be really important in our stance is that diverse team, so in industry experience and academics, but also in cultural and nationality backgrounds. So amongst 30 of us, about 50 different nationalities. So what are kind of other, you know, approaches that can be fostered within companies, for example, that will help us address these kind of new and upcoming 5G opportunities. And that's it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Patricia. That's awesome. If you do have any questions that you want to put to Patricia, please put them in the chat. And I'm sure Patricia can get to those as well. So a big thanks to all the companies for taking the time. It's 3 really interesting perspectives on the use of connectivity and the technologies to play on those platforms. So if I can invite Don and Patricia to now join the panel discussion. So as the event's been going on, we've had questions coming through to the panelists. And as we mentioned earlier, there is kind of like the elephant in the room. So I think we'll just get to the point first of all, and that's around kind of there's questions around the impact of Huawei, and then connected to that, there's also a question around security, because I think it's very much under the microscope now. So I guess there's a twin question around kind of what is the expected impact of Huawei being removed from the infrastructure, the 5G infrastructure, and then something around does 5G represent the Pandora's box? Is it a massive security risk, or is it the most secure network that we've ever seen? So something around how are we protecting our consumers around the use of data as well. But I'm not sure who wanted to go first around, let's just pick on maybe the impact or expected impact that Huawei's removal will come out. Who would like to jump in?
To sort of pass a
Sure.
comment, because obviously it is directly related, obviously, to central government decisions. I think that, I mean, the most obvious impact is going to be, there will be an impact and a delay to the 5G rollout. What that looks like, I suppose we don't exactly know. There's been predictions sort of bandied around within the news. I think that it does also strike up an opportunity for more diversification in our market, and I think we need to look at the positives around that and new entrants, especially around SMEs. And other opportunities, as we do have a very sort of monopolised market here in the UK. So I think although it will cause a delay and it's going to cost some of our existing mobile network operators quite a substantial amount of money, and I'm sure their share prices will be affected and so on, once we reach the point of 2027, I think that is going to really open up the market for a lot more opportunity, as I say. And interested to hear sort of other viewpoints from the other side.
Thanks, Jessica. Stephen, how do you think the news will impact?
Yeah, I mean, probably just to follow on with Jessica. I mean, obviously there is going to be a material impact to the service providers many of them have already started, obviously, specifically in 5G, deploying and rolling out Huawei equipment. I think there's two ways to look at this. There is definitely going to be a delay in terms of while the service providers both make a strategy in terms of how to gradually fade out that equipment, but also selecting other suppliers to come into the markets. Now, there's two ways to look at it. There is large still incumbent suppliers out there like Nokia and Ericsson who have long established, can probably come in and take quite a major role within that. Is there, it's debatable, where their technology is compared to Huawei from a cost point and technology, but I think that is a real option. The secondary side of it is there is a new range of suppliers out there. Some are long established, like Samsung, in Korea, who's been servicing, the markets for a long time. NEC in Japan, with very robust and leading edge equipment could definitely come into it. And a newer ecosystem of players, especially the new Open RAN initiatives, which are kicking off, which are still a number of years away, probably from the maturity cycle, to really bring in, but definitely could be looked at. What I would probably advise for the UK is that it's not just about 5G. If we think we can just overnight create a new startup to challenge in the space, I think that's going to be pretty difficult. What we probably could look at though is 5.5G towards 6G. And if we do invest nationally now, in terms of the research and trying to foster startup businesses focusing there, then that's really how we will diversify the supply chain in the long term. Beyond just 5G, 5G's got a big evolution towards 6G, and we should look at that as well.
Excellent, thanks, Stephen. So to consider the point around the use of the data that gets transferred over the networks, I'll be interested to hear from Patricia and Don around, I guess, how you're working with data security. What is your approach to the use of consumer data and keeping that protected? Is that a huge consideration in terms of the development of your products and services?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it has to be. With GDPR in place now, we have to conform to certain regulations and how we process data, what we do with that data, permissions from a security perspective as well. I think you're always going to have a risk of someone being able to try and hack and steal your data or try and attack your vehicle or whatever software system you have. And the way we try and mitigate that is by building security by design into all of our processes. But key to this is working with lots of different other organizations who are expert in this field. So the National Cybersecurity Centre, GCHQ, and there are lots of consultancies who work with us on some of our other driverless vehicle projects who are the experts, and we take their advice and we make sure we implement everything that we possibly can. Although, we still, and it's got to be maintained and it's got to be constantly updated, which is the only way you can ensure you're as secure as possible.
Sure, thanks. And Patricia, how are you approaching data security?
That's probably, my other day job. So of course the technology itself, so we don't use any facial recognition, we don't track or identify or trace personal information or people throughout the data footage. So if you appear and reappear in the same footage, we would never know. So that's really important. It's also about then educating consumers about the possibilities of these solutions that don't require personal information. There's a lot of, I think, misconception around the possibilities. And everyone assumes that if you're working with camera footage, you must be, yeah, tracking, tracing, and identifying, but that's not the case. And the other piece to it is just being kind of explainable and transparent about the solution. So using data protection impact assessments and helping also, we work a lot with public transit agencies and municipalities, so educating them on what's required from a software perspective and what do they need to start integrating and worrying about, and how can we meet in the middle. And it's really kind of, yeah, a core piece and pillar of our technology. And then the other one is also data. What are you using to train the software for us? So it talks about data sharing, data management. Those are huge pieces. Data access, internally, externally. Those are kind of sometimes forgotten pieces to these discussions, but really kind of vital to what we're doing every day with our partners.
Excellent, thank you. So we've had some questions coming through, and there's a question from Mark Selby, and I hope I do it justice, but essentially with a question around how UK cities and regions, and Mark Selby makes the point around not just smart cities and more around the urban areas, but how are they responding to the needs to adapt and integrate 5G, and also the potential for CAV technologies and services? You know, how is the UK getting ready, and what more needs to be done, and by who? And maybe if I can go to Jessica on that one.
I think that it is a really great question, and in part, the reason why my job title is Connected Communities is really to try to address this sort of smart city rural area divide. I think the honest answer is that you know, rural areas and outside of cities, that they are behind, and it is not high on the priorities to install 5G connectivity. There's obviously also a lot of backlash in some of those rural areas. The 5G Testbeds and Trials program has got a sort of sister program to the Urban Connected Communities program, which is focusing on rural, with an aim that you know, over the life cycle of the program, we try to look at the synergies of how you do level up connectivity in all areas, which is of course, you know, high on the political agenda as well. But I mean, I suppose I don't have an answer, but I think that you make a really good point. We can't, you know, develop driverless vehicles and you know, everything that we're talking about here today without having ubiquitous 5G coverage, or the ability to switch between, you know, connected, autonomous to you know, fully functioning driver, and that might be the stepping stone in between the two. But yeah, I mean, I don't have an answer, but it's definitely not level at the moment.
Stephen, did you want to pick up on that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to follow on Jessica's point, I mean, the government have introduced some, you know, more focused approaches towards outside-in planning, especially around fibre deployments, you know, where the prioritisation needs to be focused on the rural communities. And I call that out, you know, fibre specifically, because 5G is massively dependent on the fibre rollout in the UK. Because all of those base stations and cell towers require that physical fibre connectivity, and that's actually one of the big costs and headaches, you know, why rural has historically been sort of left behind. And if we can address that and get fibre out to the rural communities, it will help, obviously, you know, establish then, you know, the foundations for 5G there. So I think that you sort of outside-in approach that government is championing is a good start. There is some other futuristic activities that, you know, you probably saw in the news, government's investment in a company called OneWeb, which is establishing sort of non-terrestrial networks, satellite networks, basically in low Earth orbits. Now, this is happening sort of, it's not just OneWeb, there's many businesses are establishing this around the world today, and it's seen as a future opportunity for 5G to be delivered via satellite, you know, low Earth orbit satellite comms. And this really could actually create accessibility out into rural communities in the longer term, and then actually, you know, really help reduce that infrastructure build out, which is, as we know, is very difficult. You know, building mass, putting fibre in the ground. So that is something we should look, you know, towards, and you know, I've been really interested to see where government takes that investment, and hopefully we'll see that there, you know, pay dividends for UK rural connectivity.
Sure. Thanks, Stephen. So we have many startups and SMEs who are developing their mobility solutions listening now. I guess there's the question around what support is there for mobility companies looking to commercialize their products and services utilizing 5G. Jessica, is that something that you can answer?
I can definitely, direct you to the activity that's going on in the West Midlands.
Sure.
Because one of the funded parts of that is an applications accelerator. It's been won as a consortium by O2, Deloitte, Wayro, and Digital Catapult. It's live now, and it is focused on SMEs and development of applications and services. Obviously, the locations and the network, both private and macro commercial network available to trial on, is in the West Midlands. But I'll direct you to the WM5G website. They're running a lot of events at the moment, which you can engage with and learn more. And I can put a link in there. Yeah, I'll get the link and put it in the chat box. Thank you. So I'll share that. But I think that's certainly a good opportunity. And then the other space to watch out of West Midlands is that there is going to be another set of competitions that will be launched later this year. So that's, again, watch the WM5G website, and they will be focused around transport and mobility. There will be DCMS and WM5G funded. So another opportunity to develop products and services in this space.
Awesome, thank you. And I guess to go to Don on the other side, for the companies that have received support in building your companies, what has your experience been like? Have you accessed either? You mentioned earlier that you've been involved in lots of POCs. What's the experience like in terms of accessing the support for grant funding POCs? Is it a positive one?
It's positive if you win. But I think it is very challenging. The competitions are normally released by Innovate UK. There's lots of other supporting organisations. I think and what they do is they address that gap between when new technology is becoming available to enable you to have that, to allow you to build your POCs or build the initial technology that's going to be able to then use new infrastructure that's coming in. It is extremely competitive, but at the same time, if you manage to bring together the right consortium, the right partners, and you're successful at securing that type of funding, the opportunities really do catapult you to winning new projects, as well as winning commercial work. And that's what's really helped us as a business, to have the base funding to develop our operations, our platforms, and then using that as a way to win commercial work to support our activities.
Because a lot of the companies that we work with, they really do struggle with accessing the competitions. The applications themselves are quite time.
They're horrible,
and they feel there's a certain expertise.
They're horrible. You can't say what you want to say. You've only got a limited word count. It's really, really tough, because every single partner on a project wants to put themselves in the best light, as well as all the technologies and what they do. The amount of red pens and the editing that we have to do. I think if you can team up with universities, team up with professional bid writers, they're expensive but well worth it if you've got something that you can either potentially win, but also helps you formulate the message and what you're trying to achieve as well. I do want to just to your earlier question, there is an organization called 5GRIT, and this is a partnership of SMEs and universities that are supporting 5G in rural areas. So definitely worth. I'll drop the link in later as well.
Super useful. Yeah, please do share the link. Patricia, have humanizing autonomy benefited from any outside support?
Yeah, I mean, we work a lot with ranging from the catapult, so not just necessarily financial support, but also network support. We participate in a lot of kind of the trade delegation trips, Commotion, and then other ones. Also working with Innovate UK, so the COVID project with Manchester. What we're kind of starting to push for and then would like to see more of is shorter duration. So kind of really quick 3-6 months feasibility study. Does this work or not? Kind of, you know, traditional 3-year projects, they're great. And if you have your, you know, 7 partners, 5-7 partners, this is great. But sometimes you just want to quickly test something. So a little bit more flexibility in projects and project setup, or there's a lot of projects, and more so at the like Horizon 2020 level or things like that, where they maybe started 3 years ago, the technology has transitioned massively since then. It's really difficult to join now, almost impossible for many. So if we have more flexibility in memberships, consortia, and project setups, and especially for 5G as well, because you're going to be trialing different things, you're going to be bringing in different hardware suppliers, more flexibility on that side is something that we really welcome and want to be part of.
That's really interesting to hear, just jumping in quickly, because a lot of the time we get told that people want longer, bigger budget projects and they want more time. But actually, when you put it like that, that's quick, short bursts, it's feasibility. And then it's a go, no go as to whether you go to the next stage. It's actually a really good idea.
And then you can have different partners in the different phases and then different aspects, and also to ease the project management. You don't need all 10 at the very beginning. And so really trying to explore that option. What does that look like? Would be really
I will share that with my team. It's really interesting.
Excellent. Actually, so on that, I guess we've heard from the startups themselves in terms of what are the ingredients for successfully accessing these opportunities. And Jessica, I'm not sure if you're able to share a little bit more from what you see are the common characteristics or traits of companies that are able to access these testbed or opportunities.
From a 5G testbeds and trials point of view, we've actually seen a really broad range, from really small SMEs partnering with larger enterprises, or as Don mentioned, GRIT, which is a lot of SMEs all together, and it really has it's been very varied. We've had, you know, the usual that there's some of them have been backed by academics, some haven't. With the Urban Connected Communities project, it was solely place-based. So I think that, you know, we have seen a broad spectrum. I think there are plans for the future of the program as we're looking to hope to continue it and get the next tranche of funding post 2022, where there will be more focus on support for SMEs. So your comments, Patricia, were really interesting about how we might approach that. And I think we're also planning to do a consultation in the next 12 months, actually to ask what would enable more SMEs to get on board with some of these projects. In recent competitions with mobility within Transport for West Midlands, we have seen really small organisations getting the backing of mobile network operators to run a small trial, and that's a really positive way forward, because that means they've had the data and access to 5G sites that they would need to run a small scale project that was in their remit and budget.
Excellent, thank you. That's right. I mean, there's really useful hints and tips there. And I've seen recently that Innovate UK launched an SBRI fund to support businesses essentially with responses to COVID, but in a sustainable manner. So the focus on the impact of clean growth and transition to net zero. So I think it's been launched in 2 phases, but the first phase is around I think £60,000. I'm not sure if it's around research, development and testing. But just to say, and this is just to plug Capital Enterprise, we are open for opportunities to discuss potential consortium around that. So if any of those on the watching the event, if you'd like to be in touch, or if you have a proposal, you're looking for a partner, a consortium, feel free to reach out as well. So we may be a suitable partner and happy to explore on that.
And just to add, the next hackathon that will be running as part of the Applications Accelerator 5G Spring is going to be focused on COVID-19 and particularly physical distancing and the challenges and solutions around that. So I'm sure that there's lots of organisations within this this event that may be really interested in joining that.
Excellent. Thanks, Jessica. I'm just going to have a scan through the questions. I think we've probably got time for one more. In fact, let's just I've got a question from Rick Chandler around the Chip Design Centre in Cambridge. Does anybody on the panel have any insight into that? No? Okay. Just looking through.
Sorry, Darren, it's just Steve. No insight or an update on it, but I think what Rick's called out actually is sort of one of the elephants in the room, which is fabrication. Fabrication. I mean, that's, we in the West has moved to a fabless design process over the last number of years, and even actually China itself doesn't have even the volume of foundries. They've done the same, depend very heavily on Taiwan. It's actually those foundries which are I would say is the bigger risk of any supply chain going forward, because we're so heavily dependent on a couple of major worldwide foundries supplying all integrated chips worldwide. And it is something, we as the UK should look at. And the challenge is it's very difficult to get private investors to fund foundries because the cost of building them is so high. It's in the billions of dollars, and their lifetime is so limited. They only have a 3 to 5 year lifetime before the technology becomes obsolete and you have to reinvest. So, but it is a worldwide issue. I know the US, for example, administration is looking very closely at it as well, whether or not they need to establish programs to develop, again, national level foundries and sort of have some models to help fund that. So it is something the UK should be exploring.
No, for sure. I think I want to end on a positive note. So essentially, just to put to the panel, with all the benefits that we've spoken about today around, reduced latency, faster data rates, what excites the panel the most about the opportunity of 5G, and what are the kind of the standout applications we should be looking for in the coming years? Let's see. I will put that to Patricia first.
Great. From our perspective, it's really just kind of the enabling that it's going to do of that seamless urban living, and we've talked a lot about urban versus rural, but for our perspective, it is that connected city that I can get off the train. I know what's going to happen next. I don't need to worry. The ticketing is integrated. In London, we're very spoiled with some of these things, but actually, I posed this question to our team, and someone asked me, is 5G finally going to get me signal on the tube? So maybe we start with that approach first, but really just that opportunity. And then I think it's also interesting to look at, with 5G also being in a lot of other industries. I think Stephen touches on this a little bit, but what can we learn from financial sector, from manufacturing, from health, whatever some best practices that we can start adopting? I think that's something that we're really looking to leverage a lot more in our future work.
Excellent, thanks, Patricia. Moving on to Jessica.
I would like to see us able to fully realise a lot of the things that have been trialled, particularly around health and social care, local authorities, public services, and how they benefit citizens. I think that there's a bit of a void at the moment between the technology and the solutions that we're trialing, and then how you really translate those benefits to the people that live and work in cities or rural areas. And so that's what I'd really like us to see scaled and delivered over the next 10 years, probably.
Excellent, thanks, Jessica. And Don.
For me, it's very much about, it is about that passenger experience. It's about opening up mobility to everyone in society and allowing that multimodal shift to mobility as a service. It's one of those things that we talk about a lot, and as something that we want to implement. We want to influence the way people move and get from seamless end-to-end travel, and I think 5G is a real enabler of that. And excited about bringing autonomous vehicles as part of that mobility as a service piece.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Don. And then final word to Stephen.
I mean, my big hope is actually for a green revolution with it. I think if we get 5G right and it enables a lot of these industries, you know, we can really make things like smart factories with better efficiencies in terms of carbon emissions. Transportation systems can be massively reduced in their carbon footprint. Agriculture, the same. That to me is you know, 5G working with these types of industries really has an opportunity to help the UK, you know, move, or the world even move to sort of a, you know, a net zero types of emissions. And I think that's a huge opportunity. So it's not just a commercial opportunity; it's a societal opportunity. And you know, I think that's a big goal. And I think 5G is a great technology. You know, working with those industries coming together to deliver on that. But it needs them all to come together, and that's the challenge now. But wow, what a potential!
For sure, excellent. Thank you. So I think we are out of time. So to bring the event to a close, there's been lots of great input this morning. I just wanted to thank all the panelists, showcasing companies and the supporters and you, the audience, for your questions. Also, just like to say thanks to Shirin from EDF Energy and Laurel at Capital Enterprise for making this happen. So we developed this program to bring together those working to progress mobility solutions, and you know, particularly the startups. So if you do want to get involved as a speaker, as a promotional sponsor, or to host or co-host specific events, please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. I think our email addresses are shared, and we'll follow up afterwards through Laurel. But for those of you who registered for the event, you'll be invited to join our Idea London Future Mobility LinkedIn group, where you'll find articles, the news, research, and essentially you'll be able to carry on this conversation. And then just finally, just to add that due to obviously the restrictions of COVID, which are being lifted, so we at Idea London we've been innovating ourselves, and we've essentially created a virtual membership which provides startups with access to cloud credits, one-to-one business support to help with funding and all the other things that you need to grow your startup. So please do check out the Ideal London website. And thank you all very much for attending today, and hopefully you'll join us for our next event, and we'll be in touch with the dates very soon. So please do stay safe, and we'll see you all next time. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.